You're watching the legal breakdown. So, Glenn, I want to talk about the judge in the classified documents case. That's Judge Aileen Cannon. She's ordered Trump's attorneys to contact the DOJ now to expedite the security clearance process ahead of June 16th. That all suggests that she's not recusing herself in this case. Is that the right read here?
I think it's the only read, Brian. The substance of this order really doesn't matter much. It's pretty
Right.
run of the mill in a classified documents case. It is the fact that Judge Aileen Cannon issued an order. Apparently, she believes that there's no concern, there's no problem with her presiding over the case. She's apparently looked at the federal law and she has decided that no one can reasonably question her impartiality, which frankly I find astonishing because an appellate court found previously that she acted unlawfully, contrary to the law, by doing an enormous solid for Donald Trump and stopping the DOJ's criminal investigation into the very classified documents that now form the basis of the prosecution she will preside over. I thought there would be some sort of discussion or debate or public airing of at least some of this before Judge Cannon just sort of brushed it all aside and said, nope, this is my case and I'm issuing my first order.
Yeah. Well, it would kind of make sense that she wouldn't recuse, given the fact that to have enough integrity and enough self-awareness to actually recuse yourself would also have prevented her from doing the interfering that was cause for this recusal in the first place. And so, like, it just kind of makes sense given who she is, but that still doesn't make it okay. So with that said, would we know if the DOJ had requested that she recused or had initiated the process for removal and replacement?
I think the answer is yes, we would know if Jack Smith, the special counsel in the case, had filed a motion seeking to disqualify her under the applicable federal law. For those people who may be scoring at home, it's 28 United States Code section 455, which says a judge must disqualify themselves. The word is shall disqualify themselves in any proceeding where anyone could reasonably question their impartiality. So Jack Smith presumably would have filed a public-facing motion seeking to have her recuse herself and asking for a hearing on the recusal motion. That hasn't been done yet, but there is still time.
Well, I mean, doesn't this need to happen now, given the fact that we are now in the process of hearing these pretrial motions?
Yeah, the rule is a little bit flexible or a little bit vague with respect to how much time a prosecutor has to file a recusal motion under section 455. It seems that they set like a 10-day time frame from when the judge begins presiding over the case. I think there's a fair reading of what just went on, Judge Cannon issuing this first order as being kind of the first official notice that she's presiding. So application of that rule would say, okay, Jack, you got 10 days, you're up. And I think it's too important in a case like this for special counsel Jack Smith not to file that motion and fight that battle. Because, real quickly, there are, I think, three enormous concerns with Judge Cannon continuing to preside over this criminal case. First of all, because this is unprecedented, we've never tried a criminal former president of the United States for his crimes before. We've never had to confront the issue about whether the appointed federal or the assigned federal judge is conflicted out if that is the president. The defendant in the case is the president that appointed the judge. Now, let me add, the rules of conflict actually set a pretty low bar for when a judge must remove him or herself from a case. It is either an actual conflict or, more importantly, even just the appearance of conflict. And when the defendant in the case, Donald Trump, is the one who gave this judge her job, a prestigious job, a lucrative job, a lifetime job. Federal judges have life tenure. It seems to me there is at least the appearance of conflict, and it's something that I think needs to be hashed out and should be litigated. That's problem number one. Problem number two, she doesn't have the experience. She has almost no federal judicial experience. I think the reporting is she's had a total of about 4 trials, and they were short, bite-sized trials, 2, 3, 4 days, a gun case, a drug case. She is a brand new, inexperienced green judge. and you really don't want to be cutting your judicial teeth on what is the most consequential prosecution in our nation's history. I've used the analogy, Brian. If you have a brand new doctor, just graduated medical school, did their residency, passed their boards, and they've treated 2 or 3 patients, maybe for scraped knees, and then you take that doctor and throw him or her into the operating room to perform complex brain surgery, that ain't going to end well for the patient. And the patient is justice in this instance. Judge Aileen Cannon presiding over this prosecution ain't going to end well for justice. And then the third problem is the federal law requiring disqualification. That's a whole lot of problems with Cannon presiding over this case.
Yeah, I think that was perfectly put. And just to build on what you had said initially in the first point, and that is this idea that because she was appointed by Donald Trump, that gives the appearance of a conflict. We don't even have to go that far, because we already have the fact that the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, which is a conservative court of appeals, has already said that she interfered in this case before. So forget the point that Donald Trump just appointed her. We have direct interference, as told by other conservative justices or judges on this court, who were also appointed by Donald Trump, who even themselves could bring themselves out enough to say, that there was a conflict here. And
let me add, that's why under the federal law, I think everybody can and should reasonably question her impartiality, given her history in this very case. And it's important to emphasize that both the disqualification law and the rules of ethics on conflict set that very low bar, right? For conflict, it's merely appearance. For disqualification, it's merely somebody having a reasonable question about their impartiality. The reason those legal standards are so low, it's because you have an unlimited number of federal judges out there. So it's easy to just slide one off who has some appearance of conflict and put a completely fair, independent, impartial, unbiased judge to preside over the case. I know Donald Trump won't like that, but you know what? I think the American people who care about the rule of law and care about holding Donald Trump accountable fairly for his crimes do care about those kind of things.
Yep, exactly. Glenn, if the DOJ requests that Judge Aileen Cannon recuse and she doesn't, would that color how she presides over this case? Because then you've basically got a case here where the first thing that happened was the plaintiffs tried to execute a mutiny against her.
That's a great question. That is the challenge. Anytime a prosecutor has to do something that is viewed as criticism of the judge, I had to do it plenty when I was a practicing prosecutor. It's uncomfortable, but you have to do it because you really need to protect the interests and promote the interests of the American people. That's your job as an assistant United States attorney, as a federal prosecutor. So if they file the motion to have her remove herself and it fails, I think the next step is taking it up to the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals and trying to get them to order her removed. Let me tell you, Brian, the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals has ordered other judges removed from cases when they've shown themselves to be biased or for some reason conflicted out or disqualified. So they're not shy about doing it. We all know they're not shy about criticizing Judge Cannon and reversing her. So if all efforts fail, both in the trial court and in the appellate court, and they're stuck with Judge Aileen Cannon, is it a concern that she will now retaliate against the prosecutors who very publicly criticized her and tried to get her removed? Of course it's a concern. Would an honest judge of ethics, honor, and integrity retaliate? No. Will Judge Aileen Cannon retaliate? Well, we already saw her track record of how she acted lawlessly previously in this very case.
Yeah, I think if honesty were the case, I don't think that we would be having this issue in the first place. Glenn, if she remains the judge in this case, that doesn't change the fact that this is still a massively strong case against Trump. How confident are you in the DOJ's ability to prosecute this case if there is a fox in the henhouse with Judge Cannon, so to speak?
I remain highly confident. Jack Smith and his team includes some of my former homicide prosecutors, I'm happy to say. They are some of the best that the Department of Justice has to offer. I think they will be successful on the merits of the case. I think they will win a conviction, even if Judge Cannon is making some close calls in favor of Donald Trump. Hopefully, she doesn't do something entirely outrageous. Hopefully, she allows the parties full and fair voir dire, that is jury selection, and really weed out any jurors who might be so biased or have such a political or ideological bent in favor of Donald Trump that they can't sit as fair and impartial jurors in the case, she can do extreme damage to the case in a lot of ways, large and small. First of all, let's hope she doesn't, because she will be under the white hot glare of public scrutiny, indeed world scrutiny, even though there are not cameras allowed in the courtroom. But I think the prosecutors can overcome any challenges that result from Judge Cannon presiding over the case. And I believe that they will win a conviction in what at the moment is the most consequential case in our nation's history, but not for long. It will soon become, in my opinion, the second most consequential criminal prosecution in our nation's history when Jack Smith indicts Donald Trump for the insurrection.
All right, well, we'll leave it there. Obviously, we should have an answer soon, given that this trial is now beginning, and Jack Smith has just over a week to determine whether or not he'll move forward with an attempt to have her removed or replaced, or to see if she'll actually recuse herself, which again doesn't seem to be the case. But we'll have an answer here pretty soon. So if you want to stay on top of this stuff, make sure to subscribe. The links are right here on the screen. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
And I'm Glenn Kirshner.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown.